Welcome to the KBB From the Tap podcast. I'm Executive Editor Chelsea Butler. This week, designer Brea Elles, founder and director of Atelier Honnete, and I had an enlightening conversation on the differences between residential and commercial kitchen design. Be sure to subscribe to KBB's YouTube channel and click the like button on our videos. You can also subscribe to the From the Tap podcasts on such apps as Apple, Spotify, Pandora, and Google Podcasts. And please feel free to leave a review. Welcome, Brea, and thank you for joining me.
Hey, thank you for having me on the show, Chelsea.
Great. Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind just giving our listeners just a brief introduction about you and what you are involved in, what you do.
For sure. So I am the owner of a design build company firm, small boutique firm, and we specialize in residential design, custom homes, and we do design custom homes and build them. And also we work with small business owners that are wants to design their space, their branding. So we provide them with a full visual package, both interior and both for visual. So right now we're working with small bakeries, small coffee shops on the commercial end, and with residential, we're working on single family homes, just residential houses.
Okay, great. So getting into our topic for today, have you always been involved in commercial and residential kitchen design? Like, how did you get started? Which one came first?
Well, as my career, I was a design and construction commercial manager, project manager, and I oversaw all the construction, the design part and the construction of cafeterias, grab and goes, coffee shop that are embedded in academic buildings and in hospitals. So throughout the 8 years, I did only commercial, and 4 years ago, when I started freelancing as an interior architect, I started getting into the residential kitchen design.
Okay, so let's start talking a little bit about the main differences between the two, between residential and commercial. I'm sure there are a few.
Oh, yes, there are. I think one of the main, there's a few differences, but I think one of the two core one is your commercial design kitchens is very function driven. So there's less aesthetic in it. It's not about the aesthetic, it's not about the look and feel, but more about the function. And also, when it has a lot of compliance that needs to be met in terms of your federal regulatory organizations such as OSHA, and you also have your Food and Drug Administration also, and also you have your local state requirements that comes into play. So typically when you're doing commercial kitchen, OSHA is going to dictate what is going to be your fire alarms, where the placement of your sprinklers. That is just for all safety capacity in terms of people using the space. And then Food and Drug Administration will come in to tell you how the placement of your food, the storage, the temperature that your fridge needs to be at, how if you could store dry good above floor at a certain distance above floor. So it's very specific. And then you have your local jurisdiction codes that most often they're similar, but sometimes in different states you will have, or even city, you'll have slight difference, and you just have to comply to all of them. So that's one thing that is very different, is both that the commercial is very function driven and it's a lot of compliance to be met.
What about in the case for a commercial kitchen that is like an open kitchen, or, like you said, I think you mentioned bakeries, things like that the customers will actually see? I mean, I'm sure aesthetics have to come into play in some way for those kinds of spaces.
Correct. So when you have an open kitchen layout, which is mostly restaurant style, it is still also going to be required to be designed by a commercial kitchen designer, because the requirements are the same. It may be different a little bit because now it's more exposed. However, the front frame of that kitchen usually is designed by an interior designer, not necessarily a kitchen designer. because to do the facade, to make it look nice, if you have a bar, that's usually interior designer. And it's a mixture of what we call the front of house and the back of house. So once you cross those, there's like a border, how can I say that? There's like a border that separates them. So generally the front of house will be your interior designer or your interior architect that will be designing that. And the back of house will be where your specialty experts come in, your commercial designer experts come in. And then when it comes to bakeries and coffee shop, generally it is the back of house is the front of house and the back of house in terms of equipment layout. The front of house in terms of equipment layout will be designed by your commercial designer because they will let you know where you're gonna put your coffee machine, best, what are gonna be your back line. And then usually your interior designer will design around that in terms, they will make sure that they design a bar, a back storage, what we call a work surface that is wide enough to support all of the equipment that are going to be placed there. So generally it's a combination of both. You're going to have interior designer, interior architect working with a commercial kitchen designer.
So the commercial kitchen designers, that obviously sounds like a specific accreditation.
Well, generally not necessarily to be accredited, but generally they work for an equipment company. So they work for a kitchen equipment company and they're very familiar with the specifications. What are the requirements of each equipment in terms of what type of menu that you're going to have, what type of function that's going to take place in the back of the house, in the restaurant. And also generally what they would do is they will take your floor plan of that restaurant and they will map out an efficient space plan for those equipment that are going to be selected for the restaurant. And also what they would do also is that they list out all your electrical requirement, your plumbing requirement, your mechanical requirement, and generally they're the one that provides you with all those requirements. And also they will help with one of the biggest thing a lot of people face in restaurant is grease trap, which is an equipment that collects all the food, the debris, and it filters it out and you have to output it to a sewer. So generally they play a big role in assisting with restaurant owners or designers to identify where it's best suited to place your grease trap.
So I was going to get to, some different challenges that are involved in each different kind, but you've already, kind of noted the different regulations and the grease trap stuff to consider. And then also that many kind of different people involved in making sure the function comes first. Are there any other challenges or, I guess, yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry. So I think one of the things I've witnessed and experienced working with smaller business owners, when they decide to go ahead, and I think the biggest challenge for small business owner, not like the hospitals that I've worked, which were big organizations, and we have what we call design standards that already guides us in what is going to be required in a kitchen, commercial kitchen, is that a lot of small business owner doesn't understand the requirement for a grease trap, right? So and most of the time, like for example, a coffee shop, if you have an espresso machine, it is required for you to have a grease trap. And most people don't even think about, oh my God, I have to have a grease trap. And yes, and sometimes your grease trap could cost you between $3,500 to $5,000. Plus there's a need for you to maintain that grease trap to have it cleaned out throughout the year. There's a maintenance fee to it. So I think that's one of the big challenges when it comes to small businesses, not realizing the full requirement if they're not hiring a designer, a commercial designer, or not hiring an equipment company to assist them. And in terms of, you actually hit the nail on the head, one of the biggest challenges in commercial design is being able to make sure that you actually pass all your inspection, you're permitted correct, you get the permission to construct. You pass inspection because as you're building out, it needs to be inspected by not just one department. I listed out, you have different organization and department that has to give you a green flag for you. And one thing about it too is that if you're not complying, if you take on a space and you have an existing kitchen, you could get fined if you're not complying to all the required regulations. So I think it's really, that's one of the biggest challenges I face myself. And I have witnessed other people face also.
So moving into just talking a little bit about residential design. So, it sounds like, obviously, we've said it a few times, commercial is more on the functional side. I know residential is, people want their kitchens to be more functional, but would you say with residential design, there's a lot more attention paid to the aesthetics? Like how?
With commercial design, right, your kitchen, with residential, your kitchen is on stage in a house. With all the open plan designs most homes have right now, literally it's one of the part of your kitchen, your house that's on stage when people enter, they see it. And most of the time, residential clients are looking for beautiful countertop, beautiful cabinetry, color, lighting fixture. So it's more so, I think there's a balance between aesthetic and function, because when I design kitchens, function is always my priority. Function and making sure we meet all the code requirement so we could pass our inspection. And then comes in aesthetic. Okay, now we find the perfect location for the sink. And we've got our work triangle, which is the midpoint between your sink, your stove, and your fridge. We've established that is an efficient location. And now let's see, okay, let's select our countertop, let's select our material or backsplash, let's select our lighting fixture. So it is more a combination of both, but I think it's more so on the aesthetic, because most clients are more concerned on how the look and feel of their kitchens are going to be. And as you may perhaps noted also, that I have done renovation projects on so many kitchens that are poorly designed. And one thing I would say is that with residential, when you submit when you submit a kitchen design to the city, they're not looking to see if it's efficiently laid out. That's not their priority. They're looking to see, hey, is it safe? Do you have the required electrical load on your panel to support the equipment that you have? Is your plumbing done properly, right? So what happened is that you end up having a lot of houses that are built with poorly designed kitchen, and it's not even functional for a homeowner to use it when they purchase the home. And that's why a lot of the times there's a lot of kitchen renovation that occurs, because it's just not functional. So I think that's one of the biggest difference you're going to realize, that most commercial kitchen are functional for their purpose, the intent, because it's such strict requirement, versus a residential, the function is not really a strict requirement, and it's not determined by a regulatory body. Or so a person could be buying a house and they look at the kitchen not thinking about function until they buy the house, they're in the house, they're using the kitchen, they're realizing, oh my God, this is not working for us. We're a family of 5. This just doesn't work. 5 of us can't be in the kitchen together. So I think that's the big difference between the commercial and the residential.
So I know that you have, your projects kind of divided into different steps on your website. Do those steps differ between commercial and residential? Like what you might start out with in one project and, versus another kind?
No, it's generally the same. I think when it comes to starting a project, user requirements are that's what we really start off with, right? What are the requirement of the space? What are the requirement for the user? In the case is, in your residential is your homeowners, and your commercial is going to be your staff, your back of house staff, your chef, your sous chef, your dishwasher, all that team. So what is the requirement? When it comes to residential, I usually focus on lifestyle. What is your lifestyle? So in residential, we've actually identified 3 types. We have the Epicurean, we have the microwaver, and we just have the a la carte. So, and the way we say the Epicurean is the one, there's someone in the family that's a chef. They love to cook, they cook every day. They want all the bells and whistles. They want all the equipment, all the technology there's out there. And you have the a la carte, which is your modest family, your everyday family. They're cooking just to cook to feed the kids, or they're not really chefs. So they just want a standard kitchen. And then you have the microwavers that are, I used to be one myself in my early 30s. People like that, they just eat out. So all they do is they bring leftover home and they're just reheating the leftover. and they're not using any of the equipment in their kitchen, but still would require like to have a nice island because they pre-game, they have friends over for drinks, and they need space to lay it out. So those are basically driven by lifestyle, by also preference from your homeowner. So it's a lot, it usually starts with that user requirement. In the commercial kitchen, one thing that dictates what goes in a commercial kitchen is the menu. What are you serving? What's your menu? So usually in a commercial kitchen, the first thing that is at a commercial kitchen designer will ask is, what's the menu? Are you having baked goods? Are you having fried food? What type of food are you serving? Because each type of food would require certain equipment. And once that is done, we've identified the user, the requirement. This is where we go into designing your schematic. We start taking that floor plan, the existing space, and we basically draft a list of the equipment that needed and start putting, it's like a puzzle, putting the equipment, placing it in a position where it's functional, it meets codes, it meets requirements. And once you've done that, the next step is usually budget alignment, right? We need to price it out to make sure it is within our budget. And then we pass on to what we call a stakeholder approval. So in commercial kitchen, usually it's whatever steering committee or whatever project committee that is assigned, whether by the restaurant group, or if it's a small business owner, it's the owner, he or she or that group must sign off on the proposed kitchen layout and must give an approval for it. And then we package it, we fully design, develop the design, selecting your material, your non-porous flooring, and just now start putting the aesthetic to it, and then send it out for permitting. The architectural firm, the interior architect or the design company would work with the contractor, and the contractor sends it out for permit. So on both, it's the same, but it's just different stakeholders. And sometimes you could be doing a kitchen that has a steering committee that has 4 people on it. And then you have 3 people that likes it, and you have 1 person that's like, no. So it all depends on the scale of the committee, the owners that are making the decision. That's where I found myself usually in commercial gets a little complicated, because now you have to mediate between someone's, no, we don't think we need this, and then another so it's just a mediation usually. And usually it's not just commercial, it's not just kitchen, it's with all commercial design. When you have such a body that is making the final decision on the design that you're proposing.
It sounds like it's a little easier to work with a residential client simply because there's
yes.
1 or 2 people that you're talking to, and they already probably have collaborated on their own ideas.
Correct, 100%. Residential design is way much easier to navigate and get to the end line. I definitely agree with that.
So in terms of your team that you're working with, how does that differ from residential to commercial design? I know it sounds like there are more than a few cooks in the kitchen, so to speak, for commercial, but what about your close team? So
in terms of commercial, you have mostly the same team. The only one difference that you have on commercial is your equipment specialist, your kitchen equipment specialist. Usually that's a company that you contact. Within that company, they have their own commercial kitchen designers. And this is where you provide them with the floor plan and they'll design. But generally, you still have on both projects, you still have your architect, your engineer, your designer. You still have to have those in order for you. With residential, some projects don't require permit. So I don't even need an architect. I could design it if I'm not moving plumbing or electrical, or I'm not adding a hood, or I'm not moving mechanical. I could take on designing the kitchen just by our team, our designers. We will take it on, we design it, and we have fabricators that we work with. And we go ahead and get that kitchen quoted out for the cabinetry. And we select the ovens. We work with appliance companies. And based on the budget, the client's budget and their preference, we just help them select the appliance package that best suits their budget and also the function, how they cook, how to utilize their kitchen. So on them, I would say it's just the difference is you have an expert, a subject matter expert when it comes to the commercial. And also it's because of liability. That's the biggest reason. You want to separate who's specialized in one field, because if something were to happen, the liability is on your kitchen equipment company. So that's a big issue in commercial projects.
So it's probably a really obvious question, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about how the budgets differ from commercial to residential. I assume commercial is much more pricey.
Right. Commercial, because commercial, you have the equipment, you have the food, it's more sort of pricey, but also two major difference is insurance. So when it comes to the commercial kitchen, you will need to get built-in insurance, inventory insurance. There's so many different insurance that I have to purchase and check off my list. So it's insurance, it adds up. Like I've had budgets where I'm like, oh my God, the insurance is half the price of our equipment appliances. And then also it's your fees, your regulatory fees, your building fees, your permitting fees. And that usually it gets a lot, it's very expensive. So that is one of the two things by my experience that you're going to see that's going to differ between kitchen and commercial is those two big ticket items where you have your license requirement and your insurances. And then also warranties, because sometimes some kitchen equipment comes with a limited warranty, and you as a usually restaurant owners or the hospital, whether the cafeteria, you would buy the extended warranty, especially if it's not past 5 years. So you would want to extend it to 10. So that also adds up as your warranty.
And I would assume that it takes longer to complete a commercial kitchen project than it does residential.
Yes, it does. It depends on the scale. It depends. The larger the project, the longer it takes. The smaller the project, the less time it takes. However, but I would say yes, commercial takes a little bit more time. But it all depends, right? Because how can I say that? A residential, you have a lot of cabinetry. So residential, the fabrication of the cabinet takes sometimes a long time. It could take, well, depends on your fabricator. It could take you 2 to 3 months to even have the cabinet ready. Whereas when you're designing a commercial kitchen in the back of the house, a lot of the storage are already prefab. So sometimes you just purchase the storage and they put it in. Doesn't need to be custom. So sometimes it moves faster on the commercial than on the kitchen because there's not so much custom work that's being done. So it all depends the scale of the project and also what is going to be included in the project. But usually some residential kitchen could take longer than a commercial kitchen, just because of the cabinetry.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I mean, I was thinking though, if it's a renovation in a residence, the people have to kind of either figure out how to stick to certain areas of the home, or they have to move out. But in commercial, you're not having to deal with that challenge.
Correct. And sometimes we've done project in kitchen renovations where we're just doing what we call a one-to-one, meaning that we're just replacing we're replacing the cabinetry for exactly where it is. We're not moving anything, and we're just changing the countertop on the backsplash. So typically what we would do on those type of projects with our clients, we order everything. We do not demo or touch that kitchen until the cabinet is finished, until the stone is fabricated, everything has been completed. So we go in, our timeline is less than 3 days. We want to go in, we do 1 day demo, we demo everything. We go, once the demo is done, we clean up and remove everything. Then we go in and we start installing the cabinetry. Once we finish with installing the cabinet, we call the countertop company fabricator to do the installation. If we have any backsplash, then we go in, we set our backsplash. And then in the interim, our electrical or plumber comes in and do all the connections. So usually we have done 10 by 10 kitchens, 1-to-1 and 10 in literally 1 week, 5 days. So because conscious of the fact that families don't want to be out of their house for long. They want to be home. But on those renovations, it's a little bit more easier for us to do. But when we're doing full gut out, yeah, you're gonna need to be you're not gonna be utilizing the kitchen, but you could still remain in the house because we could seal the area off
Mhm.
and for dust control, dust mitigation, and you could still utilize the house.
So finally, I want to let our listeners know a little information if they are interested in becoming a commercial kitchen designer in addition to their residential work. What's the process like? What are some of your tips for going that direction?
Well, the one thing is that if you have experience as an interior designer, you've done kitchens before, the one thing I would suggest is you perhaps get some experience working with a kitchen equipment company, a kitchen equipment store, a store or company, because usually they already have senior designer on staff. And then you start to understand the requirements, the language, what to look for. So I usually generally say is that get some experience working with a commercial kitchen vendor. And once you've gotten that experience, I think after 6 months or a year, it depends on the person. Some people the learning curve is a little less steep. Some of them it's more steeper. So it all depends on the personality and the person. But my general recommendation is first you have to have a certain how can I say that, base knowledge, which is space planning, understanding building systems. You have to have a general understanding of building systems and space planning, because that's all you're going to be doing. Space planning out equipment, where do they go for functionality, for sanitation, and also for supervision. Those are like the three governance in commercial kitchens. You want to make sure it's sanitary. You have space where chef's supervision could occur. So all of that, I would say it's easier to become a residential kitchen designer than a commercial kitchen designer. I could say that. But if you're a residential kitchen designer, you could it's harder to transfer to become a commercial kitchen designer, just because of all the requirements, all the compliances, and all the additional work it comes with.
So saying that, I mean, what are the benefits, do you feel, of being both?
The benefits of being both is you make more money.
Of course.
That's the benefit of being both. Your clientele is more diverse. You could design kitchen for a restaurant, you could design kitchen for a residential. So you just have a diversity of clientele, which also leads to you potentially have an increase in your revenue, right? So I think that is the only thing I would say that the advantageous for it to do one or another. That would be it. You make more money.
Make more money, switch things up a bit, all that good stuff. Yeah.
And commercial design is boring. I could tell you that. Residential is more creative because of the nature of it. I have a few friends that work that are commercial kitchen designers too, and some of them have left and gone into residential because it's just boring. It's very dry. It's very technical. So if creativity is your driving factor in why you're professing, commercial kitchen design is not going to be somewhere that you'll thrive or you will be happy with. You will be happy in. So, but if you're okay with the technical, which I'm okay, I love both. I thrive both in technical and in creative. You'll do great in commercial. But if creativity is your driving force, your factor, you wake up, you want to add color, well, commercial design, kitchen design is not going to be somewhere that you want to swim. That's not a lane you want to swim in.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes creativity, I'm in a different field than you are, writing and that kind of thing. And I love to do it, but it's challenging because it's like what you feel like you're best at. So it's kind of like you're just kind of stressed out about it a little bit. So I guess to me, being able to switch over to commercial and sort of letting that hat go for a little while, you know, being part of a bigger team and that kind of thing, and just sort of, you know, making the extra money to do something that may not be as creative maybe gives you a little bit of a break during such a busy career anyway. But well, thank you so much, Brea, for letting our listeners know all the good tips and the benefits and differences, challenges, all that good stuff between residential and commercial design. And hopefully we'll have some candidates coming out into that particular industry.